right, let's talk about sales a little bit. First of all, let's look at human behavior. You've got two kinds of behavior as I'm referring to here for sales. One is a person who their main value when it comes to spending is saving money. That's the number one value for them, to save money. It's not the value of the product or the service. If they can get that along with saving money, that's even a bigger win. But the number one value is to save money. And then you have a different kind of person where the number one value is the value of the product or service and the difference that that'll have in their life. If you're selling someone and your value is saving money, you're going to have a tendency to use money as a comparison within the sale itself. Like, if you do this, it'll cost you this much. If you do that, it'll cost you this much less. And it'll seem very natural to you, right? But the problem is that you're comparing the wrong thing. Never compare, unless you're selling a commodity, never compare the price in a personalized one-on-one sale, okay? Now, you might say, but David, you compare the price like in forward marketing. That's totally different. That's totally different, okay? I'm talking about the one-on-one sale, you having a conversation with the person. When you compare price, you get the person focused on the value of money in their mind. And because people can't focus on two things at the same time, they walk away psychologically from the value of what your product or service does. The ultimate idea is that you're talking to people to make sales that actually value the product or the service more than they do the money, right? That is their forward-facing value in life. I want the best value of the product or service that I can get. I'm not as concerned about how much it's going to cost. But I hear this in sales conversations all the time. The salesperson will be talking to the potential client and they'll start comparing the prices. And when you do that, you're really blowing the sale. Here's another reason why. If you get somebody to buy based on price, you've got a problem, because the second it no longer matches the value that they initially bought for, they're going to be a terrible client. And if you keep that person as a client, it's always going to be a struggle with price with that person. They're going to want the best deal. They're going to want it, they're going to want you to lower. They're going to want you to come down off of that price. When you do that, you have to think to yourself, are you giving any less service? If somebody said, let's say your price was $2,000 and they said, can I get it for $1,500? Do you want me to take $500 of service off of that also to match the price? I mean, it's ridiculous when you start to think about it logically, but it's the way that most of us were raised. The key first is to break that habit and the way that you think in your own life. Stop looking to save money. If you walk into something and you get a sale or there's a discount, that's fine. But when it becomes the primary value of the reason that you're buying, then you're limiting yourself. Right? You're not living in abundance. You're not making decisions from abundance. And it's going to have a major effect in the sale itself. I was talking to a client one time years ago who said to me, I don't know if I could do this. And I said, what's this? And they said, going after this whole success thing. And I said, why not? They said, because I'm having to get rid of everything in my life. And I said, well, what is everything? And they said, well, you're talking about changing the inside of your house and setting boundaries and, not dealing with toxic people. And, I said, so what is the problem that you're actually up against right now? Well, my spouse is really pushing back on the idea that I'm spending money and that I'm changing. And I said, if you were to remove this problem of you spending money and changing, what would the relationship be like with your spouse? And they said, fine. And I said, what does fine mean? And they got really quiet. And I said, is it great? Is it fantastic? Is it wonderful? And they said, well, no, but that's the way life is. I said, okay. I said, so think about what it is that you're saying. This person was maybe in their 40s, if I remember correctly. I said, something that's very interesting? When we wake up as an individual to the idea that we want more for ourselves, and we're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever age we are, we're also waking up to the idea of where we were not taught to be successful in every area of our life. I said, it's not that you're sacrificing these things. You're changing the place that you made decisions to have the things that you have. Meaning that if we weren't taught to think as kids, if we weren't taught to evaluate, if we weren't taught to look for value in people and know how to trust somebody and set boundaries with other individuals, eventually that's going to snowball someplace in our life along with the money and any other problem that we have, because everything's constantly moving in the direction it's growing, right? So it's going to get, if it's bad, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Most people don't know how to pick a spouse when they get married. They just see what everybody else does. Most people don't know how to pick the direction for their life. Most people don't know how to value money versus the value of what they buy. They don't know how to earn money. They trade their time for money. So there's a ton of things in a person's life that the older they get, the more they find out that they don't like or are actually causing real problems. So when a person wakes up to that, it's not that they're sacrificing those things. They're readjusting their life to build it the way that they want. All a person finds out is that here's my life, and it's the product of the decisions that I've made. And if I don't know how to make sound decisions to really build the life that I want, then I have this, whatever this is in that person's life. The key comes down to, are you going to change it? To think from the idea that it's a sacrifice instead of an investment in what you truly want in life, because you've been heading the wrong direction for most of your life, is a real profound idea. But when a person thinks that they're sacrificing, it's like, well, wait a second, do you even like what you have to begin with? Well, no. Well, then how is it a sacrifice? And it causes them to stop and think, right? Because now you're dealing with the truth of this individual. They're a product of poor and ignorant decision making, and they've got a ton of issues in their life. Great, they can change it, but a mess is not something to hold on to for nostalgic reasons. Now, the reason that I'm talking about this is because comparing price in a sale is just one of the issues. You have to remember, there is a commonality, a common denominator to every one of your sales, and that's you. That's you as an aware person or as a non-aware person. If you're entering sales from the place where you think you have to get money because you have to pay your bills, if you're juggling your life because you don't have enough or you don't like what you have, how are you going to help somebody else walk into a completely different value-based conversation? If somebody was talking to you about those things, it would probably cause you to back up for whatever reason. You were scared, it made you sad, you didn't want to look at it, you were in denial, whatever it is that it might be. That's the idea of that leadership again, right? It's leading ourselves first. Can you lead yourself? Because as you make the change, the better you get, the stronger you get within the conversation itself. Like if I'm in a conversation with somebody and they start talking about the price, I'm going to address it head on immediately. I'm going to say, we don't give discounts. If that's what's most important to you, you're with the wrong person. I have no problem with letting that person go. That should never be the motivation to buy or to not buy. Again, with the exception of like commodities, right? Commodities are different because it's all about price. You know, gas, oil, corn, that's that kind of stuff, where the value is the same across the board. But it's not with you, and it's not with what it is that you do. So you have to lead with the value. And because it's your business, you're the cornerstone of that value. The better you get, the better the sales get. Not worrying on what they think of you, right? When you are concerned about what they think of you, that's a selfish thought, because you're more concerned about your well-being than actually helping somebody. It's like, I'll help somebody if it's convenient or if they're nice or if I don't have to stretch. But am I really helping somebody? Because I don't have the ability to challenge them on what it is, how they're evaluating something or what their decision is, or how to get to the real root of problem solving within a sale. If a person is resistant, if they have an objection, whatever the objection is, that is a place for you to advocate for them to win and help them problem solve if in fact they're telling you the truth and they're your ideal client. Now, what it seems to be for most people is that their fear of conflict shows up at this place. Like if you really look at it, it's like, what is the fear? What is the uneasiness? Well, you're about to do something that in your normal life would create conflict. So if you are conflict avoidant, you're going to move away from it. And it's really easy to tell that, right? Do you address problems with other people head on, straight on in your life, or do you have a tendency to back away from them? Let's see if it gets better. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to start a fight, right? Whatever it is that you say. If that's your behavior, you're conflict avoidant. So when you get to that place in a sales call, your subconscious mind is sparking the same self-defense idea, right? I don't want to upset somebody. It's a conflict problem. And in sales, it's not a conflict. That's one of the big differences. In your personal life, it might be, but you shouldn't be afraid of conflict. That's something that you can learn not to be afraid of. When you're afraid of conflict, most people, they're afraid of what other people think or that they're going to leave or not like them or whatever. In order to solve that problem, get more solid and confident in yourself. Stand for something. There's a great book Gordon Hinckley wrote back in the 90s called Standing for Something. It was a book that I studied in Proctor's membership program. It was about the idea that most people don't stand for anything anymore. It's your life, it's your business, it's your direction, it's your money. Stand for something. Stand for something. But don't let the idea of fear of conflict overthrow your mind in a sales conversation, because it's not about conflict. It's about helping someone. But most people's idea of help is within the confines of that drama triangle. Rescuer, victim, it's a codependent kind of help, which really isn't help. Real friends, family members that truly care, will not be afraid to tell you something if they think you need to hear it. The same with you. In a sales call, you're looking to truly help somebody. Helping them is not helping them make a decision that's comfortable for them. It's walking them into a place that allows them to make a decision that's uncomfortable but better for them. That's where growth is. And by the way, every sale is growth. Why? Because it's change. It's an investment in change. They're investing their money in some kind of change. That's growth. Sometimes it doesn't seem like much depending on what you're buying. But if you were to continually look at it as a spiritual exercise in life, everything that you trade money for, you're purchasing something that you're bringing into the sacred space of your life. Think about that. Every dollar that you spend, you're spending it on something to bring into the sacred space of your life. If you don't value that, you'll buy junk. If you value that sacred space, even your fun money will be wise, because you're carefully considering what it is that you want to bring into that sacred space. You don't need to teach that to the person that you're selling to, but if you hold that idea in your mind, that every dollar they spend is a sacred place in their life, and you hold it to the level of that value, you bring a person up to that value when you help them make a decision at that level, no matter what you're selling. This person is really thinking about me and the value that the product or service brings me beyond what it costs. Because a person is going to spend the money anyway. We know this, right? Most people are raised with one skill around money: how to spend it. That's it. They don't know how to earn it. They don't know how to save it. They don't know how to invest it. They don't know how to do a damn thing with it other than spend it. And they get themselves in all kinds of trouble in their life. And then they're looking to get out of that trouble, but they never go out and actually solve the real problem, which is, how do I earn it so that I can earn enough to not get into this trouble? The world throws at a person, no, you got to discipline yourself. You got to stop spending. You got to start saying no to yourself. That's the world's answer to this. We're so blind when it comes to this. It's like, if you want it, it's okay, but learn the skill, right? I like to spend money. That means I had to learn to be a good earner, because the other way wasn't working for me at all. So that's the idea. That carries over into your sales. That makes you a strong, confident salesperson. You're able to walk into places with a person that's uncomfortable for most people, but won't be uncomfortable for you. And that's the place where you're literally giving the impression of increase. When you can stand in that uncomfortable place and help them navigate that and advocate for their win, for the value, right? All right, give that some thought. Love you guys. I'll talk to you later.